Hi, I'm Dr. Melody Hilton with the StopDevaluation movement. And it's a movement of courageous voices. And we have a courageous voice here today. This is Teena Hall, and she's a spoken word artist, an actress, an author, and she's done stand-up comedy. I welcome you, Teena.
Hi, thank you.
I'm so glad you're here.
Me too, I'm excited.
Oh, we just have such a passion to hear people's story because often we don't see the battles, the struggles, the hurts, the abuse, the challenges that a person has faced. All we do is see where they're at today. So, Teena, could you share with me some of the situations in your life that caused you to feel that you did not hold value?
I grew up poor, and in school, if you didn't have the latest shoes or the latest jeans or the latest, I don't know, hair accessory, you just could see that you didn't have the same valuable assets as other people. And if other people made fun of you for what you had or didn't have, it was kind of like egg on your face, you know? It was very observed, and it was just profound the way it would affect a kid in school.
So you began to believe a lot of lies about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you're not wearing what everybody else is wearing, that leads to people judging you on that. So you'll be the last one picked for the teams when they pick two people and say, you know, two captains, and you're one of the last people picked and you're really a good athlete. It's really weird. Kind of messes with your head a bit.
So, in a lot of ways, you experienced prejudice because you were poor.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you tell me some of the experiences you had because you were poor?
I remember one time I had worn two different socks, and a girl noticed it in, I think, about ninth grade. So you're already in new school with people because you're in a bigger school. And she pointed and laughed, and then as class began, she wasn't able to verbally say anything, but she kept staring, and I just remember taking one leg and trying to hide it behind the other and just wanting to crawl under the desk and having nowhere to go. So that wasn't pleasant.
So, how did poverty affect your family life?
There were times where the lights got turned out. My mother was a single mother, and if the child support check didn't come, my dad was overseas a lot of times because he was in the military, and she did her best, worked two jobs, but you wouldn't have lights. I remember spending the night with a girlfriend and being so... I felt guilty because I knew the lights were cut out, and here I was with lights and warmth and everything, and I literally felt guilt at about 11 years old. I had no control over it, just being like a heartfelt person and a sensitive person.
So, you felt like it was your fault the lights went out? Or you just felt guilty that the lights went out?
Kind of like a survivor's guilt type thing, you know? I'm warm and cozy, and how's that fair to them if they're in a cold, barren, dark environment? They're my family.
Wow. How did this affect you emotionally?
Well, to the extent of my future, it was I would work really, really hard so that I would have the things that I wanted. And I never blamed my mom, but I just didn't want that for me. And as a result, I was always really good to my mom. And if she needed anything, I would help her financially and in any way that I could.
Tell me, was there ever any way that you stepped into addictive behaviors or different things to anesthetize the pain or to cause like temporary amnesia so you began to survive emotionally? Was there anything that affected your adulthood like that?
I definitely stepped into partying as a pretty young girl. About 16 years old, I was smoking pot pretty much every day. It does numb the pain, it anesthetizes you, it keeps you away from looking at what's, at hand. And I'm not going to say there weren't really good times too. It wasn't like some of the stories you hear, especially in Appalachia. Yeah, there would be, good times and amazing meals and amazing feasts on holidays, and people loved to come to our house and hang out. My sister would say we knew how to put the fun in dysfunction. We were fun. I got all my family into doing plays. It was called the Playmakers. So the Playmakers would come around. They would call my mom. And it was kind of like, the quintessential feast or famine,
Isn't that beautiful? Because look, you are an actress, you're an author, you're a very creative person, and that was in you as a child. And so where all those circumstances wanted to squelch out your creativity, it still rose up.
Amen. Yeah.
It was there and it was strong. And so that's really exciting.
Yeah.
To see how even in those times, how who you really were was released even in the midst of really difficult times.
Yeah.
So the fact is, you've had pain, you've had poverty. Your dad wasn't in the picture. You lived in poverty in the way that you. I think I remember hearing you telling a story about going with your food stamps or your food vouchers, and how you felt the shame of that and the rejection around you in the midst of those things. Do you want to share anything about that?
It just made you feel exposed. It made you feel like everybody was staring at you. And my first year in high school, I chose to stay in the bathroom rather than go use food stamps or food vouchers, lunch tickets, they call them, and it might have been greatly in my mind, and it might not have been such a big deal, but as a 14-year-old with all the insecurities anyway, I was also really skinny. I feel like I blossomed at about 15, and that's when the boys started going, "Oh, beautiful." I remember one time in the lunch line, a guy said that I had a great derriere, and I started feeling so exposed. I literally was trying to hide my derriere as I made my way through the line. I'm like, and a lot of girls would have felt like, "Oh, look at me, I'm hot stuff," but it just made me feel, I don't know, like I'm on an exhibition or something, and it just didn't sit right with me.
I know where you're at today. So can you tell me briefly the journey of places of devaluation and places where you did have shame, and places where you felt maybe less than because of poverty? Could you share how the journey began to release to you an awareness of how valuable you truly are?
A big place where I was bankrupt was in relationships. Because when my parents were married until I was age 4, they were not kind to one another in a variety of ways. And that's their story to tell, not mine, but we'll leave it at that. I'm sure a lot of people have experienced different forms of domestic violence in the home. And so I would end up in these not great relationships. And my first boyfriend, one night, because we were self-medicating, we were drinking a lot of scotch. It's called Cutty Sark. And I had accidentally walked into something and cut my face, and I was just kind of freaking out a little bit because back then I was into modeling and stuff, and I had a bit of a vanity problem. And he was trying to console me, but it was kind of like Lenny from Mice and Men. He had like a heavy hand and he didn't know what he was doing. And I just remember seeing my mom later, and she's like, "Why are there fingerprint bruises on your arms? What's going on?" And I remembered the former night he had like blocked me from leaving the room. So I climbed out on a roof because I was a feisty 17-year-old. And so that just foundation of not honoring relationships had a trickle down effect on me. And here I was stepping into freedom for the first time because I graduated high school at 17, and my mother gave me her blessing. I moved out to a country club where I was working, And so the bigger thing, once I got out of school, I mean, I started buying nice clothes for myself at about 14, and it was just all of the things like the substance abuse and the unhealthy relationships and looking for love in all the wrong places and allowing a boyfriend to even say an unkind remark to me. I think he used to say things like, it wasn't "what are you stupid," but it was the same connotation, you know? And so I would defend myself, but then I would be mean. So now I'm devaluing him in return,
Yeah.
which is really devaluing myself by allowing those utterances to flow forth from me. So that was worse than anything tangible, honestly, is just the damage that it did to my psyche.
Right.
I was a serial monogamist. So it was I'd be alone for 5 months and then into another relationship. And I had stopped doing hard drugs when I moved to New York at age 23, but I still kept doing weed. And I never really I never got an addiction to where I was drinking every day or had to have a drink. But what did get me after decades of self-medicating was pills. It was Valiums and it was painkillers. And by that time, I was in a marriage. I got married at age 39, and I got 2 sons in the marriage and a husband. And he came from a line of substance abuse as well, but it wasn't on the surface because they were educated, and he came from a family of teachers, and he had a good job. I had a good job. We did world travel. I was living the dream. I had a very comfortable existence pretty much as soon as I got on my own, because I would work 2, 3 jobs if I needed to, and I got to start seeing the world, and that made me feel valued because I'm like, hey, wait, if I'm on a cruise ship, like, we all get to go to the same buffets and the same stuff. They don't know how much money's in my pocket. So I still had this thing in my mind.
Because of poverty as a child, no matter how much you had, it never met the emotional need inside of you.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So what began to turn things for you to where you truly not saw value based upon what you had or what you did or what you produce, but you as a human being, not just because you're beautiful on the outside, but that you hold beauty internally? What began to bring a change in your life?
It was actually when I left my marriage, which had become very toxic, and it was becoming dangerously unpredictable. And it's his story to tell, so I won't venture into that. We were both unhealthy and toxic for one another. I left the marriage, and I literally thought I was going to rehab to get a little break. I just thought, I deserve to have a nice little quiet nervous breakdown, which was a terrible thing to say to myself. But I had gone through suicidality, anxiety, and depression for decades. And there would be, again, it's the peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. I'd be great if I had a creative project to work on. And I just remember having a 6-month, what I thought then was a 6-month nervous breakdown. I'd be fine to get up, go to work each day. I'd be fine in front of the kids, didn't want to let them see me cry. And then I would go and curl up in a ball in my room.
Were there ever any individuals in your life that became value generators for you?
Absolutely. When I was 11 years old, this wonderful lady named Debbie Brady in Sparta, North Carolina, gave me my first part in my first play. And we still have a wonderful relationship today.
So that individual saw value in you in the midst of a world where you didn't see value in yourself.
Yeah.
Look, as soon as I said that, isn't that so beautiful how you immediately knew a value generator?
Yes.
That is powerful.
Absolutely.
And all these years later, you're still very, very aware of how that impacted your life.
Yes.
Any others?
Well, my mom was always like, you're going to be a star. You shoot for the stars. If you land on the mountaintops, that's great. You can do anything you put your heart to. I believe in you. I mean, my mother would have said, if I wanted to be president, you'll be president. So she was, and she's a wonderfully intelligent, articulate. She's a grammarian. She's a writer of poetry herself. And yeah, she was always at every show she would be the one bringing the lemon drops for all of the kids and the playmakers. So
that's powerful.
Yeah.
We don't realize how investing into people, seeing their value, speaking into their worth, can literally shape the trajectory of their lives, even in the midst of all the ebbs and the flows, even in the midst of those nervous breakdowns because of shame and dysfunction and all those things. There were still those voices that kept pulling you to a place where you could see your value.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me where you're at today.
Well, I am really excited that I have not held a hand for 5 years of a guy. And like I said, my MO used to be like 5 months and I'm in another relationship. I have learned so much about myself, so much about love, receiving love, giving love away. I had written a novel that was cathartic and it was wonderful. And I wrote a beautiful devotional, and it's about love and nature and peace and joy and freedom and just being. So I learned to just be.
It sounds like you began to feed yourself on those things that were, bubbling up life inside of you.
Yes, absolutely.
Instead of your attention being on all that was bad or wrong or difficult or challenging, you began to focus on those things that would begin to build you up on the inside.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the type of person I know.
Yes. Yes.
And you are a huge value generator. It's like your whole life you're wanting to invest into others. And so simply, if you think about it, no matter all that, you've gone through a lot of things, and all those things have developed you into the person that can help the disenfranchised.
Oh, yes.
The marginalized, the hurting, and the wounded. You want to bring hope.
Oh, yeah.
Your spoken words are full of hope.
Yes. Hope and freedom. That's my thing.
When you didn't have hope, guess what? Now you're a giver of hope.
Oh, yes.
When you didn't have freedom, now you're a giver of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always what happens to us, but how we respond to that, right?
Oh, yeah.
There was times where you responded negatively because the pain was so great, but you've learned how to take all those things and release good. Yes. I like to say, take our pain and bring purpose.
Purpose, yes, that's perfect.
Take the negative reality and rewrite the instructions of our story.
Yes.
Because our past does not define us any longer. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Teena. I really appreciate your heart that you have for so many. And I believe your greatest days are yet before you.
Thank you.
Thank you.